Alexander approaches the command staff, particularly Wigglesworth. He explains that he wants to go after Hakon. Alexander basically tells them he's going to do it no matter what, but he'd like their help. Varley, surprisingly, agrees. For all Bjornsson's might, Hakon may be the greater threat, since he can suborn other lords and nations into, even temporarily, serving the Svard's interests. Alexander wants to take Steelshod and pursue Hakon on horseback, follow him, take him alive, and then take him back to the Marshal. Gwyneth Carver says she wants to go too, along with the dozen or so of her sons that are still relatively intact, able to ride and fight. This is all well and good, Wigglesworth admits. Hakon is a worthy target, but how the fuck are they going to get out of the inner keep? Varley pipes up again. A word about Varley. Agrippa has been using one of his class abilities, Healthy Living, to help Varley. The base ability triggers if the targets make a weekly will save to follow Agrippa's advice, granting plus 5 HP and plus 1 to saves if they're living healthy. He further advances this later with more tiers. But the ability has also been a justification for broader narrative actions. He's trying to keep Varley from keeling over, making regular biology checks to monitor the old man's health and make new recommendations. Varley's been seeing marked improvements, not just in his body, but in the sharpness of his mind. I had always figured Varley would die before the end of the campaign, that is, war campaign in Cadia, not D&D campaign. But now, it's looking like he won't. And I had always had Varley pegged as someone who, in his prime, was a legendary figure himself. A master strategist that was responsible for some of these Spitalian city-states taking their independence from the Castilian Empire. So, I knew when I made him that he's actually tiered up to the mid-20s, most of them being tactical and strategic abilities. At this point in the game, we had not finished developing our strategy subsystem, where most of Varley's abilities would lie. And Varley was originally sort of a shadow of his former self anyway, but I had some broad ideas of stuff he was able to do. So, Varley begins devising a strategy. Late into the night following the day Hakon left, the western gate of the inner keep is thrown open, and a storm of Cadian knights comes charging out. A glorious last charge into the Svardic lines, Wigglesworth in the lead, choosing to die in a blaze of glory. The Svards scrambled to respond, horns blowing, troops redeploying, coming in from their camps at the edges of the keep and outside. The walls of the inner keep are lined with archers, harrying the Svards every step of the way, until the Svards give the inner keep a wide berth. Then the eastern gate is thrown open, and out ride Steelshod and the Sons of Victory. Every member of Steelshod has mounted up, even the sick list. We can thank Agrippa for that. His Tier 2 ability, Convalescence, allows him to effectively double daily HP recovery for a few selected targets. And his Tier 3 ability, Lifesaver, gives him once a session advantage towards a medical goal, sort of like Yoren's Hotshot, but only for a medical task. Between these two abilities, he's gotten the sick list to riding ready. Even Chauncey, who successfully took Hubert's blood and is on the road to recovery. Some members, including Chauncey of course, are still suffering from serious injuries, and the riding isn't gonna do them any favors. But with Agrippa there to help them with their nightly checks to keep the injuries from worsening, the players are confident they can keep everyone stitched together. Of the sons, there's Gwyneth, of course. Some of the sons had come up already and had names, but we round out the full dozen at this point. They all use the same core stat block, minimum level 3, minimum strength 16, etc. But these guys have been through hell. They start getting defining features, unique tiers, etc. Master Butterman, one of Gwyneth's lieutenants, calm, collected, polite, always calls everyone Sir or similar. Reginald Thatcher, called Reg, a big beefy fellow that grew up on a farm, got a low-class vibe to him, carouses with Bear and Leona. Pete Slater, called Breaker, shorter than many of the sons, but absolutely ferocious in battle, prone to shattering shields, horses, and armor with his swings. Quigley Chandler, called Quickly, a little leaner than his comrades and quicker on his feet, works twice as hard to prove that he can cut it. Vern Delaney, called Terror, another of Gwyneth's lieutenants, a huge man with a wild beard and deadly skill with an axe, prone to focused battle rages. John Tinsmith, called Tiny, the single largest member of all the Sons, quiet, well-read fellow that liked solitude and books. Maggie Thatcher, called Lioness, an unflinchingly brave and solid warrior with more than a little iron in her spine, no relation to Reg. Pate Moynihan, called Moynihan, born impoverished in Victoria, the city proper, a scrapper and very tenacious. Hates his first name. Wade Chandler, called Sonny, Quickly's older brother, a longtime axeman, known for his cheerful, optimistic attitude. Cass Chandler, called Cass, a relatively fresh recruit of the Sons, and younger sister of Quickly and Wade. Ben Miller, called Cheesecloth, son of a cheesemaker, but he gets his nickname for how quickly his axe parts mail. 12 altogether, including Gwyneth, plus about 30 members of Steelshod. They ride hard straight for the eastern gate in the outer wall. The gate's open, as the Svards have been using it to go in and out of Kilchester at will. A handful of guards, but most of the forces are either still mobilizing or have already rushed to the west side of the keep to engage Wigglesworth. Varley's planned timing is impeccable. The sudden attack has thrown the Svards into disarray, caused something of a clusterfuck. Wigglesworth and the knights retreated as suddenly as they attacked, and by the time the Svards realize what's happened, Steelshod and the Sons are long gone. Riding off into the wilderness to the south, guided only by moonlight. Steelshod rides hard to put some distance between them and Ter Bjornsson's army. Kara rides to the rear, doing her best to obfuscate their tracks, while Amos takes the lead, picking up Hakon's trail. Wolves howl in the distance as they cross through woods and over hills. Just before dawn, they stop for a few hours to rest, catch a bit of sleep, and give Agrippa the chance to check on some of the most injured, such as Chauncey, Ignis, and Alexander. Chauncey is faring the worst by far, but he gives a wan smile and a shaky thumbs up when Alexander asks how he feels. They hit the saddle again, riding after what they hope is Hakon's trail. The second day, they nearly ride into an ambush, but their scouts catch wind of it in time, and it turns into a head-on fight. A couple dozen Svardic elites on horseback, part of Hakon's retinue. The Svards outnumbered and outclassed, but they put up a good fight. Alexander calls out for some of them to be taken alive. Easily done. Alexander wants to know where Hakon is going next. Hubert offers to get him some answers, given a few moments alone with a captive. No questions are asked. Hubert gets his alone time. Hakon is heading for Shipbreaker Bay, the rough, rocky bay south of Cadia. Shallow-drafted ships, such as Svardic longships, aren't likely to have much difficulty with the bay, and there is at least one well-known trade route through the bay to Stanmouth. But the Svards say Hakon and many other Svardic vessels are docked off the southern coast of Cadia, at a hidden cove. Amos recognizes the port as Smuggler's Cove, a great spot for outlaws such as himself to lay low from both Cadia and Stanmouth. Since the Svards hold Strathton and Chatsworth, it's most likely Hakon will take the road over to Chatsworth to pass through the foothills, and then head south overland to the cove. Amos reckons if they cut through the wooded hills due south, then over west, they can cut Hakon off before he arrives. Alexander is like a man possessed. His focus is becoming single-minded. He agrees to Amos's plan, and gives the order to execute the Svardic prisoners and mount up. Nobody is crying over the killing of raping, murdering reavers like Svards, but still, some of his closest members are growing concerned about Alexander, and how dark a turn he may take if they reach Hakon too late to save Elena. It's somewhere between the start of Kilchester and here that Alexander picked up tiers 7 and 8. Terrible Swift Sword you already heard about, A powerful blow that, if it kills its target, imposes a general -1 to all enemies that see it, penalty to checks, attacks, damage, etc. Most group mods like that apply to all roles, to keep things simple. And then, Intimidating Presence, which grants a similar -1 all the time to enemies within 50 feet of Alexander. This is the start of a darker, harsher Alexander, and only time will tell if things can turn around for him. They travel overland for a few days. The howl of wolves has increased, heard sporadically both day and night. On the third day of travel, Levin rides back to the group from where he's been scouting their eastern flank, and gives his report. "Men," he says, nodding back the way he came. "At least 20. "They were Svards?" Alexander asks. Levin considers this for a moment, then gives a single nod. "Probably. Following us." When Steelshod and the Sons investigate, the men are nowhere to be found. Kara finds faint tracks, well concealed, and loses their trail quickly. They hear wolf howls again, an hour later. On and off, throughout the day, their scouts report the same thing. Groups of men shadowing their company, traveling in packs of 8 or 10 or 12. Tall, lean, and savage-looking, armed with spears and bows, always on foot, draped in animal skins, too small to be bearsarks, and these skins are different. Varying, mottled shades of gray and black and brown. Gunnar mutters a curse when Steelshod finally realizes it. He said he's heard stories of scouts that followed the Bearsark clans. The Bearsarks called them Ulfsknar, but he's never actually seen them before. They aren't wearing bearskins. They're wearing wolf skins. In the distance, they hear a wolf howl. A moment later, another howls in response. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.